Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. So we have seen about the efficiency and conditions for maximum efficiency of a DC motor. So today let us discuss on the various types of testing employed in DC motors. So this testing of DC motors is necessary in order to find out what is the efficiency of the motor. So here we are trying to find out the various losses for the actual machine which is manufactured. So the losses of a DC motor or any DC machine can be briefly categorized into two parts. So the types of testing what we are doing. So it is classified as direct and indirect testing. So under direct testing and indirect testing, following classifications are available. So in direct testing, the first one is brake test. So simply by applying a mechanical brake to the DC motor, we are finding out what are the parameters. In indirect testing, instead of connecting a brake drum, we are using different techniques proposed by different scientists. So under that, the first one is Swinburne's test, second one is Hopkinson's test. Then we have retardation test, field test. So these are the different types of testing that are known to us in order to find out the loss and efficiency of a DC motor. So let us have a look at these testing methods one by one and have a brief discussion on their merits and demerits also. Then let us see which type of testing can be employed for which type of motors and in which particular scenario. So first one is brake test. So as the name suggests, we are using a brake. So here is the schematic representation of the rotor of a DC drum. This is the brake drum with a small letter radius R. So this is the shaft. A flywheel or a brake drum is attached, and this is connected via belt drives to a spring tension. So this spring tension is a device which, if we tighten using the two bolts available, it acts like the motor is being loaded. So we are creating a opposition to the rotation of the motor by mechanically tightening these two. So here S1 and S2 are the direction of rotation. If it is clockwise, then S2 can be called as a tight side and S1 can be called as slack side. And if the direction is anti-clockwise, then S1 is called as tight side and S2 is called as slack side. So more about this we can learn in belt drives chapter in elements of mechanical engineering subject. So the input power to a DC motor is given as a product of supply voltage into the supply current which is drawn. So the usual notations we are using it. The torque, the load torque, what we say, the net torque available at the shaft for this particular brake test can be calculated as the difference in reading of S1 and S2 multiply by 9.81 and multiply by radius of the brake drum in meters. So this S1 and S2 gives us the spring force in kg farad meter square, and 9.81 is the parameter associated with the acceleration due to gravity, and it is also used to convert the force in newtons to kgs. Okay, or kgs in newtons. R is the radius of the brake drum used, and it should be taken in meters. The output power is if we know this torque and if we know what is the speed of rotation at a given value of torque, then multiplying that angular velocity or angular rotation speed with the calculated torque gives us the mechanical output power. So if we know the output and input powers, it is possible for us to find out the efficiency. The efficiency of the motor is given by P out by P in. So output power is given by omega T here. Omega is the speed in radians per second. Tau is the torque which is calculated using these three parameters, and input power is given by supply voltage into supply current. So the disadvantage of this particular method is for larger motors this cannot be done, because it is not so easy to load a larger motor while testing without practically connecting it to any load. So let us say the load can be a conveyor belt or any other device which it is supposed to operate. Instead of that, we are creating a virtual environment by loading it with the belt. So wearing and tearing of this belt can take place. So this particular method is suitable only for smaller motors and not advisable for large motors. Next is Swinburne's test. So this is a method proposed by the scientist named Swinburne. So here is the circuit diagram. So let us have a look at it. So there is a supply voltage. This looks like a DC shunt motor and it is a shunt motor. Okay, so we have a 3-point starter connected. We actually, this is a 4-point starter, not 3. Okay, because we have a field control also. So there is a starter here and supply is given, and we are conducting this test by running a DC machine on no load. We are not connecting this particular setup to any of the load. Simply we are running it on no load and noting down these values. Now, if this is the current drawn from the supply, and since we are running it on no load, it is denoted by I naught. Then this will be the armature current running on no load, so denoted by IA naught, and ISH is the field current. Okay, so the setup is simple. We have to switch on the supply and make sure that motor is running at its rated speed. So to adjust the rated speed, we are using a shunt field control here. Okay, so here we have to make sure that armature is getting the rated supply voltage and rated field current is flowing in the shunt field. Under this condition, the motor will rotate at its base speed. Okay, so at this particular parameter, we are noting down the values of these meters. So by observing these readings, we are predetermining the efficiency of this DC motor without actually loading the machine. So the efficiency can be found out for a machine working either as a generator or as a motor. So both ways we can find out by doing this test. Okay, let us see how it is. So now no load armature current is given by I naught minus ISH. Supply current minus field current is the armature current for a DC shunt motor. So supply current is given by I naught. Using the branch rule, part of the current goes to the field and remaining current goes to the armature. So if we apply KCL at this particular node, we get I naught is equal to IA naught plus ISH. So from this, if we find out IA naught, we get it as I naught minus ISH. So if this is the no load currents, no load value, and the no load input is given by the supply voltage V multiplied by I naught. So this will give us the power drawn from the supply. So the input power at no load is V into I naught. So next we have to find out stray losses. So iron loss, friction loss, windage loss. These are also called as constant losses, which will contribute to stray loss. Okay, so here we know the machine is not connected to any load, so, but still it is rotating, and while rotating, if output power is 0, it is still drawing some input power. Okay, so even though output is 0, it is drawing some input, so that means this is drawn to compensate the loss. Okay, so now from the no load input, if we subtract the field losses and armature copper losses, whatever value we are left out, it is called as stray loss, because these are the miscellaneous losses as per our original definition. So from the available input supply, if we observe that field loss plus armature loss is equal to input, then stray loss is zero, which is practically not possible. This stray loss will be present to a very small value, okay, because it cannot be ignored, so it will be present. So roughly we can take it as 1% of the total losses, but here this is the method to accurately find out how to see this stray loss. So no load input minus field loss minus armature copper loss. So let us substitute. So PS is the notation used for stray loss. No load input is given by V into I naught. Field loss for the timing, let us denote it by PF, and armature copper loss, let us denote it by PA naught. So this PF can be given by V into ISH or ISH square RSH, and PA naught is given by IA naught square RA. Okay, so this is the armature copper loss at no load. This is the input at no load, and this is the field copper loss. Field copper loss, unless and until we are going for a field control method, it remains constant for any load. So this is not called as field loss at no load. Okay, so this is the value of stray loss. Now constant loss is given by no load input minus no load armature copper loss. So now armature copper loss is a variable loss. So if from the input armature copper loss, whatever is left out can be called as constant loss. Okay, so this is how we find out the constant loss. From the no load input, we subtract the armature copper loss at no load. So from this equation, if we see that Vi naught minus Pa naught is equal to PS plus PF. So that is stray loss plus shunt field losses. So stray loss and shunt field loss are called as constant loss as per Swinburne's test. So now let I be the value of any load current. Okay, we are not loading the machine, but we know what is the rated current of the machine, and let us take a value, arbitrary value I, which is between 0 and full load current of the machine. It can be any value. Okay, so let us denote it by capital I. Then the efficiency for this DC machine when it is working as a motor is given by output by input. Output is given by input minus losses. So input minus losses divided by input. So now here current is not I naught, current is some I, which is anywhere between 0 and the full load rated value of the machine. So that Vi minus I minus ISH, supply current minus field current gives us the armature current. So armature copper loss and constant loss. So input minus variable loss minus constant loss will give us output divided by input. So this is the efficiency of a DC motor using Swinburne's test method. So in here we are actually conducting the test on no load, and from this no load result it is possible for us to find out the constant losses, and thus for we can assume that the loss variable losses are linear, and as the current increases the variable loss will also increase, so linear relationship, but even though there is a square term here. Okay, so for any value of load current we can theoretically calculate, so that is why we call it as predetermining the efficiency without loading the machine. Next is the generator value. So when this machine is working as a generator, we find out the efficiency, because the testing methods is same for both motor as well as generator. So when this machine is working as a generator, the efficiency is given by output by input, and we want to stick to the electrical terms. So input is actually a mechanical energy, so let us not complicate it. So let us try to convert it to electrical itself. So output plus losses is input. So we have to see what is the fraction here. So output obtained when it is working as a generator is V into I for any value I. And armature current of a generator is nothing but armature current is the total generated current. From that current, part of the current is gone as a field. So this supply current or this load current, what we call in case of generator, plus the field current is equal to armature current when it is working as a DC generator. So when it is working as a DC generator, armature current, from the armature current, part of the current is going to the field and remaining is going to the load. When it is working as a motor, from the supply current, part of the current is going for field and remaining is going to the armature. So this is the directional difference which we have to understand. So for a motor, supply current is equal to armature current plus field current, because supply current has to supply both armature and field. For a DC generator, load current plus field current is armature, because armature has to supply load as well as field. This is the difference. So if you understand these two terminologies, finding these equations is not at all difficult. So let us understand the advantages and few drawbacks of this Swinburne's test. Okay, so advantages. So convenient and economical, as power required to test the machine is small. So whatever may be the rating of the machine, we are conducting the test only on no load, and power drawn at no load is a very small fraction of the rated power. So even though the motor is of very large rating, we are conducting the test at no load, so the power required to test is very small. There is no waste of much of electricity. So efficiency can be predetermined at any load because of constant losses are known. So if we calculate the value of constant loss, so it is from the total loss, if it is possible for us to separate out the constant loss, we know what is variable losses for any value of current, because we know that armature resistance is constant, and if we know the armature current value, it is possible for us to find out armature copper losses at any load. From there, efficiency can be predetermined. Disadvantages. Now, distortion of flux increases iron losses from no load to full load. This is not taken into account. So when the motor is loaded, because of armature reaction, the air gap flux is not constant. If air gap flux is not constant, then iron loss will not be constant. So whatever constant loss we have calculated will not be accurate at higher loads. Next, commutation and temperature rise limits at full load is not considered. So because of commutation, brush voltage drop increases, and thus the total loss will change. And this brush voltage drop the power loss will be going on increasing as the armature current will also increase. So that is not taken into consideration. And also in a conductor, if the current increases, its temperature will also increase. So that is also not taken into consideration. So limitations of this Swinburne's test. So this is applicable to the machines with the constant flux. So basically this is applicable only for shunt machines without going for field flux control. Not applicable for series machine, because in series machine flux is not constant, it varies with the armature current. Okay, so this method can be employed only for a machine with constant flux, because if the constant flux is constant, then constant losses are constant. Okay, so that is a very peculiar term, that is constant loss being constant. And series motors cannot be run on no load, and hence cannot be tested using this method. So while discussing the characteristic of series motor, we have seen a hyperbolic curve, speed versus torque. So there we had a small discussion that if a DC series motor is run on no load, it will attain a dangerously high speed, thus damaging the armature. And Swinburne test is specifically performed at no load. So it is not possible to test a series machine using this technique. Next we are learning about Hopkinson's test. So let us have a look at the circuit diagram. So this is very important. So understand the circuit properly. Here, two machines, one working as a motor, other working as a generator, is connected via shaft. So there is a mechanical connection between motor and generator. Also, the output of the generator is electrically connected to the motor. So two machines are connected electrically as well as mechanically. So this is also called as a back-to-back test or regenerative test. So this is something similar to the Sumner's test performed on two identical transformers. Okay, so let us understand this. The two machines which we are using should be identical, and this cannot be performed on non-identical machine. So minimum number of machines required to perform Hopkinson's test is 2. One will work as a motor, one will work as a generator. Both the machine there is a field rheostat provided to adjust certain parameters. Now connecting two machines mechanically is not at all difficult. Simply connect a shaft. Okay, using proper mechanism, simply connect the shaft and make sure that there is no vibration. We cannot connect simply two machines parallel electrically unless and until they have same voltage. So that is why we are using this switch. So before performing the test, let us connect both the machines electrically first. So initially the switch S is kept open, supply is switched on. Using the motor field rheostat, motor is brought to its rated speed. Now since these two machines are identical, the rated speed of motor and generator will be same. And since this shaft connects both motor and generator, both machine will run at same speed. Okay, so both machines are running at rated speed using this rheostat. Now once this is running at rated speed, using the generator field rheostat, vary the voltage. What we have to do is basically the motor terminal voltage and generator terminal voltage should be same, or there should not be any potential difference between motor and generator terminals. Okay, so the ground path is already provided. So the positive path where it is present, if we observe, whatever is the supply voltage, it is given to the motor terminal. We have to vary this field rheostat of the generator, and the voltage across the armature of the generator should be equal to armature of the motor. So to assure this properly, a voltmeter is connected between motor and generator. So now if the potential of motor is equal to potential of generator, then their potential difference should be 0. So by adjusting this generator field rheostat, if this voltmeter shows 0, it is safe for us to close this switch. So once we close this switch, both the machines will be connected mechanically as well as electrically. So now this is called as regenerative because it is drawing some amount of current from the supply. The motor is drawing some amount of current from the supply. That current drawn is also supplying the field and armature. The current induced in the generator is supplying the generator field, and remaining current is going to the motor. So whatever current is demanded by the motor IM is supplied by the generator, and the current is drawn from the supply. Okay, so generator supplies the major part of the required current for the motor, and remaining current is drawn from the supply. So the current drawn from the supply is very small here. So that is why this method is called as regenerative test. Okay, so now if this is self powered machine, if we switch off the supply, what happens? This discussion let us have it after looking at the mathematical approach of this Hopkinson test. Okay, so for the time being, we have connected both the machines electrically as well as mechanically. Generator is supplying the motor electrically. Motor is giving the mechanical energy to the generator. Okay, so motor is a device giving mechanical energy to the generator to rotate, and thus generator is giving electrical energy to the motor to operate. and whatever the difference in energy is required, that power is drawn from the supply. Then this will be a sustained mechanism, and it will continue to run as long as the stability is maintained. So now stray losses for both the machines. It is taken as a constant loss now. So from the supply current, okay, V into IL, subtract the armature copper loss and field copper loss of both the machines. Okay, so here we are subtracting the electrical losses from the electrical input, and whatever loss is left, we are calling it as stray loss in this particular test. So supply current is V into IL. From that, subtract IAM square RAM, armature copper loss, ISHM square RSHM, that is the total resistance of the field circuit, IAG square RAG, and ISHG square RSHG. Okay, so since we are using rheostats here, it is possible that these two rheostats are not at the same position. So the total resistance of field circuit of both the machine will not be same. So we are using the terminology RSHM and RSHG here. Whereas in armature circuit, we are not using any resistance in series, and both the machines are identical. So R used for armature resistance of both the machines. So now if PC is the constant loss or the stray loss for both the machines, and since two machines are identical, if we divide this by 2, we can get the approximate stray loss of individual machine. So now for the generator, the efficiency is given by output plus losses. So VIAG supply, that is the terminal voltage V multiplied by generator armature current. This is the total output of the generator. Divide it by output plus losses. So output plus losses. First is generator armature copper loss, generator field copper loss, and stray loss, which is nothing but constant loss, which is calculated here. So this will give us the efficiency for generator. Second one, when for this motor, the efficiency is given by input minus losses by input. So input for the motor is IAM plus ISHM. Okay, this current IM. So because for motor, it is not a self field device, so field supply also is drawn from the source itself. Okay, so power required for the field. So IAM plus ISHM is the input current for the motor. So that is multiplied with the V to get the input. So input minus losses divided by input. So here losses are armature copper loss, field copper loss, and stray loss. Okay, so this parameter is very important. Find the stray loss for both the machines by given setup, that is subtract all the losses from the supply, that is called a stray loss, divided by 2 because two machines are identical. If two machines are not identical, then we cannot use this particular expression, and if two machines are not identical, it is not possible for us to perform this Hopkinson's test. So now let us get back to our original doubts, that is, if we switch off the supply, will the machine run on its own? The answer is no. Eventually it will come to rest after some time. Why? Because this stray loss, if we subtract it from the input power, whatever loss we are getting, it is drawn from the supply actually. Okay, so the supply is powering this system such that it will not come to rest. So it is supplying the frictional losses, windage losses, and all other constant losses which are present. So if we switch off the supply here, then this generator will be overloaded and motor will go on drawing the balance amount of current from the generator. So if the generator gets overloaded, its speed will drop. If the generator speed drops, this shaft is also connected to the motor. Motor speed will also drop. Okay, so if the speed of the generator or the input mechanical speed drops, the output of the generator reduces. If the output of the generator reduces, that output is given as an input to the motor, it will also reduce and hence further the speed drops. Thus, it will come to rest eventually. So now it means we have understood that the concept of free energy is not at all possible. So we might have seen many videos or links in YouTube where two machines are connected in parallel without any wires and they are running on its own. Theoretically, it is impossible, practically, it is not achievable. So now we have understood that there should be a minimum amount of supply required to supply this frictional and windage losses. So the concept of free energy is a myth. So this is beyond the syllabus topic for the viewers. Please keep this in mind. There is nothing called as free energy generation. So I hope these two tests are clear. Now let us understand what are the merits of this Hopkinson's test. So economical as power consumed from the supply is low even for larger machines. So there in the brake test we understood that it is not possible to perform a full load test on larger machines because it requires larger power from the supply. Here we observe that most of the electrical power is self-funded and a small amount of power is drawn from the supply. So whatever may be the larger machines power rating, it is possible to conduct this particular test. So now by varying the field rheostats of motor and generator, we can vary the armature currents of a motor as well as generator. Thus we can give a realistic load scenario by making the actual load current to flow in the circuit. Now if the actual current is flowing in the circuit, we can also check its temperature withstanding abilities and temperature rise and commutation conditions, etc. for any value of load. So from no load to full load we can vary the generator field rheostat. Okay, because once it is synchronized, if we vary the generator field, it gives us more power, and if it gives us more power, we can see that motor absorbs more power and gives more mechanical power. Okay, so thus it is possible to find out the temperature rise for the actual loading condition, and also it is also possible to find out the commutation conditions. So stray losses at rated load conditions are considered. So now we know that at a loaded condition, the value of current drawn for motor as well as generator is different. But we know how to calculate the stray loss. So for any value of load current, we can calculate the stray loss, the actual stray loss, by considering all the constraints. Okay, so the practical stray losses can be calculated using this method, whereas in Swinburne's test, stray loss is predetermined and assumed to be constant. Here, if flux weakening takes place because of the armature reaction, then the stray losses will change, but it is possible for us to calculate using the method. So efficiency at any load can be determined. So actual determination here. This is not a predetermination. Actually, we are performing the test for the given value of load current, and thus it is possible to find out the value of efficiency. Now, disadvantages of this method. So necessity of two practically identical machines. So this is one of the major requirement. It is necessary for us to have two machines and it should be identical, practically identical. So suitable only for large manufacturers. So let us say there is a industry which manufactures a higher number of DC motors. Then we can take two such motors, connect them electrically as well as mechanically, and perform the test. Whereas for an individual customer having a single motor, it is not practically viable to perform this Hopkinson test. So this is possible for manufacturers, and usually they perform this. So let us go to the next topic, that is a field test. So this method is generally employed for DC series motors. Okay, let us have a look at the circuit. The experimental setup is quite complicated. We have a DC series motor as well as DC series generator, but the field of the generator is connected in series with the motor. It is not connected in series with the generator armature. Instead, the motor field and generator field are connected in series. This is to make sure that the same amount of field current is flowing through both the field windings. Here also both the machines should be identical, and in this particular connection the current flowing through the motor field and generator field will be equal, and thus it will produce same amount of flux in both the machines. So only to ensure this, we are connecting two fields in series. Okay, so this is a series motor and this is a series generator which is connected to a electrical load. So if we vary this electrical load, the generator load changes, thus the motor load will also change. So practically loading is possible, and usually we are keeping this while starting the machine, we are keeping it not keeping it 0, we are keeping it at some position, because DC machines, series machines are never to be started on no loads. So V1 gives us the motor terminal voltages for both the uh, motor field and armature. V gives us the supply voltage, and V2 gives us the generator terminal voltage for armature only. So now power taken from supply is given by V into I1 for this particular setup. Power obtained as a output from the generator is V2 into I2. A total loss in both the machines. So we know what is the power taken from the supply. We know what is the power obtained from the system. So if we subtract the input power from the output power, we get the total loss in the system. This loss will be electrical losses as well as mechanical losses, stray losses, etc. everything. So the total loss in both the machines, okay, PT is equal to VI1 minus V2 I2. And if these two machines are identical, then we can say that total power loss in each machine is PT divided by 2. Let us find out the copper loss now. So copper loss is given by I1 square series resistance plus armature resistance of the motor plus the series resistance of the field, because I1 is the current flowing through these three resistances: field resistance of motor, field resistance of generator, and armature resistance of motor. Since both the machines are identical, the series field resistance of both the machine is same. So that is why it is taken as 2 times RSC. That is the motor field plus generator field is equal to 2 times RSC, because both are equal, plus RAM, motor armature resistance. So 3 values in series, that becomes the effective resistance of this circuit, multiplied by current square. This will give us the copper loss in this particular circuit, and copper loss in this circuit is given by I2 square RAG. So generator armature resistance is the only resistance which is present in this circuit, and we know what is the value of current flowing through that circuit. So square of that current multiplied by the generator resistance gives us the copper loss of the second circuit. If we add it together, we get the total copper loss of the entire system. Now stray loss. Now we know what is the total loss of the machine, and we know what is the electrical losses now. Okay, that is the copper losses. So if we, from the available total loss, if we subtract the copper loss, see now practically what should happen here, the only loss which is happening should be the copper loss, but it is observed that total loss is more than total copper loss. So what is the difference between this total loss and copper loss? If we subtract that, the small amount of power loss is called as stray loss. So that can also be calculated. So now this stray loss is for both the systems, okay, for both machines which are connected. For individual machine, it will be PS by 2, the efficiency of the motor. So efficiency of the motor is given by input minus losses divided by input. So input for the motor alone, the motor voltage is V1 now. Okay, only for motor terminals the voltage is V1. The current going is I1, and subtract the losses. So I1 square field resistance, armature resistance. So motor armature resistance, motor field resistance square plus stray loss, that is PS divided by 2 divided by input. For this particular generator, efficiency is given by output by input, or output divided by output plus losses. Output is V2 I2, losses, first one is field loss. First current through the field winding is I1 square. Okay, please note that this field is connected in series with the motor circuit. So the current through the field winding is I1, so I1 square RSC, field loss. The current through the generator armature is I2, so I2 square RAG plus stray loss. So copper losses plus stray loss. This will give us the individual machine efficiency. So now this particular method can also be performed on two identical machines only. So this is also possible only for a manufacturer. It may not be possible for a individual customer who is buying single machines. Okay, so the power drawn from the supply will be very large, but series motors rating will also be actually very large. So to perform this particular test, a lot of supply is required, but there are no other economical ways to test a DC series machine. So it is hard and fast rule that we have to go with this method only to test a series machine. So next one is the retardation test. So carefully observe this circuit. Retardation test, what exactly done is, there is a switch used which is called as a DP-DT switch. It's a double pole double throw switch. It can be closed left side, thus the supply is given to the motor armature, or it can be opened such that supply is disconnected, or it can be closed towards right side such that there will be a small load connected to the armature. Okay, three positions are possible. Position 1 is connecting the armature to the supply. Position 2 is opening the switch. Position 3 is connecting it to a load resistance. Okay, so understand the significance here. This is a separately excited DC motor. We are switching off the supply given to the armature by opening the switch. So if we open the switch, then the motor speed drops and eventually the motor comes to rest. So we observe the rate of change of speed, that is the deceleration, or which is also called as thus we find out what are the rotational losses. So if there is no friction, then this machine will never stop even if we remove the armature supply. But since there is a friction and windage present, the moment the armature supply is disconnected, the rotor starts reducing its speed and eventually it will come to rest. So this is the principle of operation of a retardation test. Now when the armature is open, this is a rotor which is rotating and field supply is present. So this acts like a generator and a small amount of EMF will be induced. We can observe it. Now if we connect this switch in position 3, then the machine which is working as a generator will be connected to an electrical load. There is no mechanical energy supplying externally, and suddenly we are loading the machine, so it will come to rest faster. So this is electrical braking. Okay, so now in position 1 And two, we are not actually connecting any electrical load to the system. We are not using electrical braking. We are allowing it to come to rest on its own, and we observe what is the rate of change of speed. So to get a better accuracy in this particular test, the beginning of the test is done by running the machine slightly higher than its rated speed. Once it is run slightly higher than the rated speed, we are opening the switch, and thus we observe what is the energy stored here and what is the time required to come to rest or change in the voltage induced in them. So the voltage reduces as the speed reduces, the EMF induced should also reduce because it is directly proportional, and thus we find out what is the rotational losses. So rotational losses is denoted by P rot. It is nothing but the rate of change of kinetic energy. Even after removing the supply to the armature, the rotor tends to rotate because of a phenomenon called as inertia. And the energy which makes this motor rotate is its kinetic energy stored, or what we call it as a dynamic torque. So the kinetic energy stored in this rotor of the machine, if it was a linear motion, we can call it as a half mv square, the formula for kinetic energy. But since this is a rotational motion, the kinetic energy is given by half j omega square, where j is the term called as moment of inertia, which is an analogy for mass in linear motion. But in rotational motion, we have to find out its moment of inertia, and omega square is the angular speed. Since the movement is rotational, we cannot go for linear speed, we have to go for angular speed. So other than that, this is nothing but a kinetic energy. So instead of half mv square, we are using the formula half j omega omega square. Okay, so j is the moment of inertia, omega is the angular speed. So rate of change of kinetic energy or rate of reduction in kinetic energy gives us rotational loss. See, whatever energy is stored, it will take some time to come to rest. Now that energy, total energy divided by total time taken, gives us power, and this power is nothing but the power lost because of friction and windage. So that is why this is called as rotational loss. So if we differentiate this particular term within the parenthesis, we get the term j omega into d omega m by dt. So moment of inertia, speed, and rate of change of speed, which is called as acceleration. So using this equation, it is possible to find out rotational loss. So the intention of the retardation test is to find out the rotational loss. Now here the moment of inertia will be given by the manufacturer. The speed at which we want the rotational loss, we can substitute here and calculate. Now, what is this d omega m by dt? How to determine this particular term? Let us see this. So now this p rotational can also be written as, the omega can be written as 2 pi n by 60. So we are substituting those terms and we can approximate the value of p rotation to 0.11 j n dn by dt. This is when speed is given in rpm. So now if we switch on the machine and run it above the rated speed, cut off the supply to the armature, and observe the drop in speed, at each and every instance we can plot a speed time curve. Okay, so the speed slightly above the rated speed, we are running it, we are cutting off the armature supply, and we are plotting a graph. That is, for each and every instant we are noting down the value of speed and plotting a graph. For this graph, if we draw a tangent and find out its slope, that is y by x, okay, delta n, that is change in speed, by delta t, so that is dn by dt, it is possible for us to find out rate of change of speed. So performing this test is to find out dn by dt or d omega by dt, and then substituting in this formula just to find out what is the rotational loss. So this is done on no load condition. Similarly, we repeat it with the loaded condition, and we observe that rate of change of speed is faster, and there we find out what is the average value of this rotational losses. If we know this rotational losses, if we go back to the mechanical losses, we can more accurately find out the efficiency of a DC motor. Okay, so these are the testing methods which are available for DC machine. That's all we have got for today. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you get the notifications instantly. Also subscribe to our sister channel Sahadhyayana for more subjects on electrical engineering. Thank you.